Oh, hello and welcome. Jessica here from Sensoriam for another one of our in-depth discussions for Founder.I.Am. And today I am with the wonderful Emily of Rohr Remedy, a truly unique Australian natural skincare brand with just as unique character behind it. Emily, welcome. How are you?
Thanks. So nice wrap. Thank you very much. Good to be here. And, we love what you guys do too. And that's great to see brands supporting each other. So it's fantastic.
It's true. And we always like to start with where in the world are you coming from today?
I am coming from Broome, Western Australia, in the remote far north of WA. A beautiful, dusty, Pindan-laden, turquoise water, Broome tropical paradise. Although it's cold for us, it has warmed up a bit in the course of the day. But we've been having quite cool nights. It's only about 30 during the day at the moment. So we consider that a bit cold because it's cooling down at night. But we have been getting down to about 12 degrees, which is just unheard of in Broome. So we much prefer it around the 18 degree. So all the locals are in boots, jackets, going, oh, it's so cold. And then all the tourists are in their bathers.
Oh, what a great part of the world to be in. Now, I understand that's not where you've come from originally. You've sort of ended up there. Is that correct?
Met a Broome bloke and that'll bring love, does amazing things.
Yes.
And when I came here, I went, being a good city girl, I thought, who in the hell would end up here? And then next thing you know, I'm married and having children and, kind of 25 years later, I still have deep connections, although I do go between Cairns and Broome now because we moved for our kids' high school. So,
yeah.
And that's where I did a lot of Rohr Remedy kind of from, although it started in Broome with the artists and things like that, a lot of the Rohr Remedy stuff's been more East Coast based, so I kind of flip between the two, and it keeps me very busy, which is a good thing because I have a very active mind, and it's good to keep it occupied.
Yes. Now, you mentioned there that Rohr Remedy was sort of like this offspring or fabulous evolution of your experience with artists and working with artists. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, we ran a very busy studio. So I have a gallery as well. It's called Short Street Gallery. And we've been going 25 years, the gallery. And as part of that, we worked with the last people to come out of the desert in the Kimberley region. And this was this wonderful group of people from the Great Sandy Desert. And, of course, being good traditional bush people, any disease, whether it's the cold, whether it's cancer, whether it's a infection in your leg, that old bush people always have a cure. And when you bring your children here, it's because it's very tropical and it gets very moist in the air, so you end up with unusual infections. And so they would always have a plant for every occasion. And part of our job would be to collect them, and they were very tough. I don't know whether they'd allow this kind of training in universities, but maybe we need more of it. They'd carry a big stick and they'd sit on the ground and bosh you around. And if you did it wrong, they'd give you a whack.
Right.
So
that's like the ruler over your hand.
Right. Give you a whack if you're doing the rubbish way, until you get it. So they were tough taskmasters, but I loved every minute of it because they were so gorgeous and generous and beautiful, in a way, very gentle. I mean, they never hit you that hard, but it was just a pull up, no, you're not doing it right. And very kind people. But they, anyway, so they were very gracious in introducing the world of Australian plants and the incredible capabilities they have. And initially we were very interested in the medical side of things more so than the cosmetic side of things. But what, we've got the TGA is a very stringent kind of organisation and quite some Aboriginal friends of mine put through some of the plants into the TGA they get knocked back on the grounds of they contain things that the TGA has never seen before. So they can't
Right.
right?
Okay.
No one had heard of black swans. No one had seen kangaroos before. So like our animals, Australia has plants that contain things that have evolved over millions of years, that because the TGA based a lot of its founding kind of materials and things on European style plants, and they all got through fine without the requirements we now have to do. I mean, I think they're over stringent on things like that, and I know in New Zealand they have exemptions for Maori plants and things like that, and I'd love to see acknowledgement of the knowledge and research that the First Nation people have of those plants be registered. So there is a bit of a bureaucratic nightmare with a lot of these plants. So anyway, then we started looking at cosmetic solutions because they are fantastically medicinal and cosmeceutical and rich in antioxidants beyond belief and have amazing properties. And of course, cosmetically we can use them without mentioning too much of the kind of pharmacological benefits. So we talk about them in terms of antioxidants or high vitamin C content and things like that. And we tend to leave out the other things. But what we chose to do was to keep all those fabulous other things in there. So we work with the excipients and the derivatives and everything that's around the plant. So it keeps the actives very stable. And so it works with your skin to be absorbed. It works differently on everyone's skin. And we just thought we'd let nature do the heavy lifting. So we work with what we've got.
Yeah. Wow.
And of course, we'll need more lifting as we get a bit older.
Yeah, that's right. The further on we go on our journeys.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's only really just recently that a lot of the Australian botanicals, natives, are being seen to be the new wonder in a way. But clearly our First Nations people have known this for a long time. In your experience, were they using it for sort of skincare, cosmetic uses at all, or mostly just medicinal?
Look, I always quote a good dear friend of mine who's a Yaru woman, and I remember being pregnant and I was working with her, and she'd look at me and she'd go, "Emily, your skin is so dry. You clearly don't oil. Us Aboriginal women oil all the time. We love oiling." And it's very true. So, yes, I mean, oiling, I'm reading now on TikTok, there's this trend of putting oil in your hair and tying it up and sleeping in it, and they've got a word for it. I can't remember the word because I'm not very hip, but
clearly I'm not either because I don't know.
But I'm thinking, God, people have done this for, all the old cultures have a long tradition of oiling themselves, oiling their skins. And, after that I started oiling my hair, oiling my skin, caring for myself, nurturing myself. And you know what? My skin improved out of sight. And I remember going to Singapore for something. I can't remember quite what I was there for. It was a work thing. And I thought, I'll go and get my skin done, a facial. Anyway, I'm in this clinic getting this facial, and she said to me, "What do you use on your skin?" And this is when we first started making Rohr Remedy. I said, "Well, actually, it's a brand that I've got, but I'm using a lot of oils and stuff from Australian plants." And she was really interesting because she said, "You're one of the first Western women I've treated that doesn't have really deep down dried out skin." And I thought that was really interesting. And so she was very interested in what I was using because when they do that deep looking in your skin, it wasn't dried out, and she couldn't understand why. So
Yeah.
I put it down to the oils.
Get oiling, everyone.
Yeah, get oiling. Well, it's leather, clean it, oil it, as I always say. It'll last
Yeah.
longer and look better.
Yeah, for sure. Now, obviously, you've sort of brought together your experience with some of your artists that you worked with there in the gallery and the medicines you saw them using from the bush, but also you have your father was a dermatologist as well. So I guess it's where some of the roads crossed.
Absolutely. I've always been passionate about skin because I loved as a young, 5-year-old learning that my father was a dermatologist, and just saying the word's a big thing when you're about 5.
Yeah.
And so I was always fascinated by this word and by why skin is so fascinating. And it is very fascinating because it's our largest organ. It is the cover of the book, if you like. So
Yeah.
it's really a key to lots of management of self-care and things like that, and good health. And, often we get things like psoriasis, which is essentially an autoimmune disease, or eczema, which is a symptom of multiple different causes. These things are very difficult to manage and manifest quite differently on every skin. So to me, it's quite fascinating that the skin can show up things. I mean, even cancers, you'll see people say, oh, yeah, I got some weird bumps here, or that look like mosquito bites, and then it turned out to be something, so the skin is like that, it's such a vital first first appearance, first organ, a place where your health is. You can't have healthy skin if you're internally unhealthy as well.
Yes.
So, it's not just about oiling it, really. It's also about whole maintenance of your body, and diet is important to that. So, I love all these internal beauty products and things like that because they're really interesting, because I do think they're connected. So like everything, it's like when you get a sore back and it's actually your hip or your ankle that's throwing it out. We're very connected organisms. So, I like, and that's what I like about the complexities of the Australian plants as well. So yes, dermatology was a big part of my life. We always talked about skin diseases at the dinner table, or we worked in Dad's rooms and were very exposed and knew a lot of dermatologists growing up. So I've always been fascinated. And Dad's been absolutely amazing on my journey, because I can ring him all the time and say, and then I was very lucky for my father-in-law was a chemist, but he was trained by his father, who was an apothecarist, actually, goes right back to pre-pharmacy days. Yeah. And so he helped me learn how to formulate, which was a great thing. So that really was an amazing thing.
Yeah, it's like you had all of these perfect ingredients coming together in your own alchemic way to turn it into Rohr Remedy.
That's absolutely right. It just seemed like the right thing. You've got a dermatologist, you've got a pharmacist, you've got these wonderful old girls with these incredible ingredients. And at the time when we started, no one was really using them. They don't have we kind of also really push that, working with Indigenous communities and sourcing the plants from the best growers and things like that, which happen to be the First Nation people. And now I notice that everyone's kind of trying to do that. And so we kind of lay the groundwork of this is how you do it, do it the right way, which I'm very proud of, because certainly when we started, people weren't using it. And now you see almost every brand in the world's got something with Kakadu plum in, and, they're saying wild harvesting and doing all that, which is great.
Yeah. And in terms of the wild harvesting and the sourcing, where do you do your sourcing from, and how are we going to, I guess, in a way, ensure that it's sustainable if everyone's going to jump on and start using it? Can you see that that's still going to be possible?
Yeah, look, I can tell you there is so many of these trees all over the Kimberley, but not only in the Kimberley, Northern Territory, they run right over the top. But not only that, there's a lot of communities that are planting plantations. So there's plantations. I mean, we wild harvest because we get it from the peninsula north of here. But I got a daughter-in-law who's Larrakia, and she was saying they've got heaps there too. And, I mean, this year we've actually had a double harvest. So every so often Kakadu plum will drop 2 seasons of Kakadu plums. So it's, they're just going gangbusters up here at the moment because we're getting the double harvest. And there certainly doesn't seem to be a shortage of it. I know people that are producing tons and tons of Kakadu plum off their properties and land and things like that. And they're all looking for buyers. So I can't, it's such a common tree, it's kind of almost like saying we'll run out of eucalyptus. But we don't want to be, well, eucalyptus is an interesting one because we're no longer the biggest grower of eucalyptus or supplier of eucalyptus oil in the world, whereas we should be, because it's such a native tree to us. But I think even Portugal has taken over, and China certainly has taken over. And I can tell you China will be planting these seeds now. They will be planting Kakadu plum. They'll be planting all these plants. Yeah. Because that's what they do.
Yeah. That's right.
So, I mean, that's not such a great thing, and I think Australia really needs to tap into the fact that it is our native plant and push that. But certainly most of the ingredients, we say they're rare, but they're rare outside of Australia. They're not rare within Australia. And so most of the plants we use are things that are quite there's a lot of them. Gumby is probably the hardest one, and that's northern New South Wales, but there is a lot of them, and you get it from the leaf. Yeah. So we use the leaf extract for the gumby, and it's great because it's so sustainable.
Yeah, yeah. The gumby is in the lip balm, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. So, and it's one of the harder ones we have for getting approval overseas, strangely enough. Because it's just not on it hasn't got a CAS number, and it's all the regulations that are associated with the cosmetic world that make Australian plants quite difficult. And I'm sure a lot of First Nations people around the world that have plants that they've used for a long time would find similar things. It's just regulations become so controlling. Or they seem to be growing bureaucrats.
Definitely. So then how did you actually end up in the gallery and running a gallery and representing First Nations artists in the first place as well?
I had done fine arts, and I'd worked for PICA, Perth Institute of Contemporary Art, and then I ended up doing design and ended up in Sydney working in magazines and marketing and such things as that world of fast-paced Sydney. And then when I came up to Broome, I got offered all this work, particularly for I ended up working for the AMS, which is the Aboriginal Medical Services up here. And we were working with a theatre group. So we worked with most of Australia's top actors, strangely enough now. They're all quite famous actors. So a lot of the Indigenous actors that are now very well known started their careers at a place called Heatworks in Broome, where they would use playback theatre to educate people in remote communities. And I came on to do an art department and train people so we could do community-specific artwork. And I always hated Aboriginal art. I hate to say it, says me, who's been now an art dealer for 25 years, working mainly in that space. But when I was at uni, I always felt like it was other. Yeah. And something that I couldn't really culturally identify with, and I didn't feel it was my place to really comment on it or have anything to do with I was intimidated by it perhaps, or just felt I couldn't possibly understand it. So, it doesn't really have anything for me. But I was very lucky to work for the AMS, and as part of that I had to go into different communities with this theatre group and talk to people about how best to use imagery to communicate to each individual community. And in those days we were dealing with things like AIDS and we had some scarce soil diseases that had been an outbreak through the Kimberley. There was a whole lot of things that were floating around that we needed the community to really understand. And so we wanted to do it. What we were looking to do is short-run brochures that would support the theatre group, that would use the artistic practice of that community to communicate. So we would engage with local artists and get them to do the artwork, and then we'd talk about, whether it's sexually transmitted diseases, whether it was, you can no longer have 55 people in the back of a ute, whether it was, beware of the soil, there's a disease, make sure you don't walk in stagnant water, or whooping cough. We had a huge outbreak of whooping cough. So we were using it to talk about very serious health issues at the same time, but using art as a tool, art and theatre, as a tool to get people to respond to it. And through that process, I met a lot of artists, and no one was showing their work in Broome at the time. And they all used to ring me and say, someone's asked me to paint a T-shirt. How much money should I ask them for? Or what should I do? Yeah. And I was quite good on all the copyright stuff. So I'd say, well, this is what you've got to do. You find out how many, you get a price for each. And, I'd try and guide people on how to negotiate a contract, to retain copyright for themselves. And everyone used to say, you should start a gallery. You should start a gallery. And we had this space. And in the end, I thought, I'll hang some art in there and see how we go. And we did. We just started, because no one was showing them in Broome. So there were a few galleries that were showing a lot of non-Indigenous art. And there were a couple of galleries that might do one show a year with First Nation artists. But we started and decided to work with communities through community-controlled art centres. And then as a result of that, there were a whole lot of people that were unrepresented, which happened to be this group of people that walked out of the desert. And so they didn't have an art centre, and they were looking to paint. A lot of people were getting their land rights, and they wanted to remember either the country they'd come from or document the country that they had. And that was another thing too. A lot of my friends got their country back. They were looking for, God, we finally got this amazing asset. How do we make it work for ourselves, And the thing that I work well with First Nation people in the Kimberley kind of context, or in the more traditional kind of cultural practice mob, because I never want to make them white fellas. I can't understand why you'd prefer to go fishing than sitting in an office all day. So, to get your food or whatever. So I do have a great deal of compassion and understanding for why people make the choices that they make. And I think that the thing that the art and the bush plants and the range of programs, another program that's been hugely successful, because I think First Nation people love country, they love their culture, they're happy to work in those contexts. And these are the things that are most important for them. And so I think I try to work with people doing that thing, and I try and do the stuff that's really annoying, like the paperwork or money or the compliance factor, the testing. This video is going bad again, isn't it? Ooh,
no, it's okay.
Annoying.
Don't worry, it's recording on your end, like high quality and my end, so it's all good. Okay. It'll work.
Great. So I always try and do that white fella stuff, that's really annoying. And actually, as I get older, I go, I'd really much rather be in the desert, or out fishing.
Yeah. And so now, what does First Nation art look, feel like for you? Like, you said before it was something that you didn't understand, a little intimidated by, not sure what the take on it. Now, after 25 years of working with the actual artist and helping them to, yeah, yeah,
I think they're just the most beautiful artists in the world, and they've taught me
yeah,
so much about ways of seeing. It's often the way, though, things that are initially complex turn out to be really fascinating, and it's interesting what we fear, or what we feel we can't understand. And I guess from working with everyone, I learned that, of course, you can understand this. Maybe not in the same way, but you can apply the same founding principles of colour, line and form, and the beauty of First Nations art is it stands up to that. And that's the same with the plants as well, and the medicine stuff. It may not form into our scientific theory of perfect compliance and paperwork, but actually over the test of time, it works. So, if it works, it works, and you can't argue with that. Right. And so, I think sometimes we all get, held back by things we don't understand. And I think having ended up often being the only white girl in the room, I feel, that not that I even notice that now, but, I remember a few times I'd look around and really, you're always aware that you can't talk about things in the same way or with the same confidence. So it's good because it's humbling, and to be humble is a great thing. It's an undervalued trait, and I've come to just so much. It's one of my favourite traits in people, absolutely without a doubt, is humility. And I actually seek people that are humble now around me rather than and that's a very Aboriginal thing too, I mean, the old people, they'd often be the most powerful person in the community, might be sitting under a tree with barely anything, be so low key, and it'll just be that people will, if they like you or want to share something with you, they'll whisper to you that, oh man, it's very important, very strong. And you never speak of your own achievements, if you like. You're the total opposite to Western culture. Yeah. So I love all that about it. And I think, the plants are like it too. They're low key. They're not particularly beautiful or, and a lot of the medicine plants on the East Coast actually got eradicated because they were a bit ugly, and it's only through kind of pharmacopoeias that people have done and research from various ethnobotanists that we can read about some of these plants that, they're really rare. You couldn't use them in a commercial production because there's not enough of them because they were phased out, whereas, the Western population moved in and put their own plants down. So, and that's life too. I mean, none of us, you can kind of spend your life having regrets, but it doesn't get you anywhere. No. Just embrace it. But so it's an interesting thing. So for me now, I have a great sense of pride in having had the great privilege of working with that artwork, but also with the Australian plants and with the old people. And there's so much, that we don't know. And I don't think we should fear the unknown. I think we should dive in. And I think that's the same with anything, whether it's homophobia or racism or any of these stupid things. I always find it amazing that people can even think like that. I go, really? How can it even enter your head? It's just so crazy. Yeah. Why? Yeah. And it's just fear of the difference, and maybe we all have it a bit. So, I certainly, as I said, I was scared of Aboriginal art, and now I'm just its biggest advocate and love it the most, So, and I'm surrounded by it all the time. So, what you fear can sometimes end up being your greatest passion or love.
It's very true. The same can be said of going into business as well. What would you say are some of the biggest reasons why Rohr Remedy has been so successful? given that you were very much the pioneer in it, as you've noted?
I just think it was probably a bit being the first one. And, I think I was very passionate about it, and really passionate about that message of, using Australian plants and not being fearful of them, and not, and an Australian identity. I guess I look at myself very much as an Australian. Some people say, "Oh, get rid of all the Westerners that have come out." I mean, where would I go? No one would have me. I'm too mixed, I'm a fundamentally Australian, and I think there's a lot of people like me, and we've always had that kind of inferiority complex, which I kind of don't have anymore at all. But I think in previous generations, a lot of people had that. And really, actually, I love the Australianness I love Australian stuff. I love Australia. I think it's such a magnificently beautiful country. I love the desert. I love the places, the dryness, the weird bushes, the weird animals, the crazy people. And, I love the fact that it's also got, I think the dark history. Everywhere has dark histories, it's part of being human. And I think we have to accept it, face up to it, and try not to repeat it, and just move on and find joy in things, because life's full of darkness. So you've got to try and just hold your course. And I guess with Rohr Remedy, that's the same with starting a business. As you know, being your own boss, working in a business, you have to work really hard. And at times it's like, why the hell am I doing this? This is crazy. But you hold your course, you press on. If you love what you're doing and it's working, keep going, because you are making people look at things a bit differently, or embrace their own ingredients, or whatever it is. And I think what you guys are trying to do with perfumes too is fantastic, because essentially you're developing, quintessential Australian perfumes, really. And that's a great thing, because I think we need more of that. The French don't own perfumiers.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. But even the French now, we have had a French brand reach out to us that is 100% natural as well, and they've reached out to us to come on board and be available on Sensoriam. So even within France now, there's starting to be that trend back to the natural and the use of the botanicals in their full form. So it's a beautiful trend to see.
It is a great trend to see, because look, don't get me wrong, I love science, but, for things of the everyday, there's nothing more beautiful than freshly cut flowers, or, beautiful perfume that's just a pure oil, or, a cream that's a pure oil, because we don't need all the additives and things that go with it.
Yeah. And so what does smell mean to you?
Oh, smell is everything. Smell is so important. I think smell is everything. Smell is memory. Smell is place. Smell is identity. Smell, for me, I associate people with the perfumes they wear. Smell's so fundamental to everything. And I think it's really interesting, because I think it's so undervalued, and something that people dismiss and don't realise how much of a vital role it plays in how we perceive the world. It is one of the five senses, and it's got equal as importance as visual. And where it's most obvious, I reckon, is modern architecture. So modern architecture, they now do everything on CAD, and it's all visually done. Yeah. And you just see same buildings all over the world, and they're so boring. Yes, I've studied modernism or whatever, but what they forget is that each space that they're building for is unique. And you know what makes it really unique is the scent in the air, the way the wind blows, and all the perfumes and things. And I often think they need to smell more, not depend so much on vision, but depend on scent and touch, because I think a lot of modern architecture's forgotten how to smell and how to feel. And I think they're very interconnected, scent and feeling, So I believe it to be probably one of the more pure senses in the it's a bit like music as an art form. Music cuts straight to the brain. And I believe to an extent painting and visual arts cut through too. But particularly music, it's one of the more pure the art forms, and I think scent is a bit like that in terms of physical world stuff. It defines so much. For me, I think it's essential.
Yeah. Well, we do as well, of course. That's why we love what we do at Sensoriam. And so we have absolutely loved getting to know yourself, Emily, and the wonderful inspiration behind Rohr Remedy. So thank you so much. And I look forward to sending a few of our Australian perfumes to you with their particular unique Australian smells in them. And we'll be very interested to hear your thoughts. Yes.
Well, I feel very honoured and privileged. So thank you so much for having us, because we love what you guys do. And I just keep making the world a more beautiful place to live in by creating beautiful scents. So...
Thank you.